here because you're looking for the best of the best of the best.
Oh, that's what the New York Giants have been looking for years. This is Tim's New York Giants Straight Talk, powered by Online Big Blue LLC. I want to talk about the Knicks. I want to talk about the Giants. I want to talk about the Rangers. I want to talk about the playoffs. I want to talk about, do the Giants have the capability to make a playoff run this year? Can they follow in the footsteps of the Rangers and the Knicks? And really, should Joe Schoen be following the mantra or the motto or the direction or the plan that the Knicks really put together these last couple of years? And it's interesting because you think about James Dolan, you think about the whole Phil Jackson fiasco, and it kind of started with the Phil Jackson fiasco. But the Knicks formulated a game plan. And I would like to send out our well wishes to Mr. DiVincenzo after that vicious, intentional hit by Miles Turner.
Get him a body bag, Johnny! Yeah!
It was almost like he was trying to put him in a body bag. Oh, let's just hope he can play in game 2. Of course, that's being facetious. Joe Schoen came in here with all the pomp, all the circumstance, all the ability to come in here and try to change directions of this franchise. He talked about building a foundation, building for the ground up. Sometimes everything he talks about is like an oxymoron. You say one thing and then you kind of do the exact opposite. You say you're building a franchise. You have the 5th and the 7th pick. You take foundational pieces and Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. Now, of course, one of the picks has not worked out as expected, and we're still waiting for the full totality of the talents of Kayvon Thibodeau and going into year 3. So we have to wait and see what happens then. But you talk about building a foundation. You talk about building it through the draft. You talk about not augmenting you talk about not building through free agency, but augmenting the team through free agency. You talk about not spending big. You talk about limiting the ramifications of the salary cap. You talk about all these things, but then you kind of do the exact opposite. And then you go back and do what you say you weren't going to do, but then you do what you say you're going to do. And it's just made this even more of a muddled mess. Joe Schoen talked about the salary cap, talked about getting out of salary cap purgatory, talked about not overspending on players. He preached about this in his press conferences, especially in the beginning. And then what does he do? We're in worse salary cap shape than we were before. And I really don't get it. And like I said, don't get mad at me because I did not invent math. I apologize for people that like to yell at me about, well, you're just, no. Right now, if you take a look at this roster, you take a look at the talent of the roster, he basically built the roster through the top 5 guys again, gave Daniel Jones that ridiculous contract, and with right now, if camp was to break today and with the rule of 51 expiring, we would be about negative $15 to $17 million in cap space, with not including the practice squad, not including the $10 million Joe likes to have in operational cap space. So you add those factors in. So you're looking anywhere between $25 to $29 million in the negative. That's a bad thing. That's negative cap space. But Joe Schoen talked about not being his predecessor, not overspending, not giving out these damning contracts. But then you got a guy making 18.74%. You didn't stagger the contracts of Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence because you knew they were all going to mature at the same time. You went out and, you know what? I love Bobby Okereke, but Bobby Okereke is almost 5% of your salary cap, and you overpaid for an off-the-ball linebacker. And people are going to be like, well, you're just picking on Bobby Okereke and you're just being negative. No, I'm just speaking facts. If you take a look about what the market value was last year, and you can use the Chicago Bears as a reference, at what an off-the-ball linebacker was making, you overpaid for Bobby Okereke. And sometimes when you're a bad team, we've talked about this before, you have to overpay to get talent to come to your organization. Now, I'm not saying that's what we did with Bobby Okereke, and he had a great season, but he's one player out of 11 on that defense. But you went out and you gave him that money. You then went out and turned around and went against your judgment of, again, we're not gonna build this team through the draft. We're not gonna through Fraser. We're not gonna build this team through trades. But then you went out and you traded for Darren Waller. I didn't like the Waller move from day one. I said it, did a video about it. Why? Well, very simple reason. At that point in time, he was 2 years removed from his top season. He was 2 years full of injuries. Well, talk about it was the wedding. That was the stupidest videos that I've seen. He got traded because he didn't invite the coach to the wedding. No, he got traded because of the fact that he, while a talented player, was injury prone and no longer near the peak of his career. And at that time, he was 30 years old. He is now 32 years old. So you talk about not doing that, but then you go out and make that type of trade. And then again, you talk about the fact that, we are going to build this team the right way. Well, have you built this team the right way? They came out and rated the rosters the other day. So I forgot what Giant website did it. And they said, this is the least talented roster Daniel Jones has had since 2019. I don't know how they figured that out yet, considering we haven't even played a game yet or we haven't even gone to training camp. But once again, you talk about doing things the right way, but you go out and you spend money like a drunken sailor. And you know what they say? What can you do with a drunken sailor early in the morning? Evidently, you have to shave his belly with a rusty razor, shave his belly with a rusty razor. And don't forget to put him in the bed with the captain's daughter. But you go back and say, we're going to build through the draft. Okay. Then you go out and give John Runyon Jr. that money. Now, the deal's not that bad. It's not that horrid, but Green Bay will tell you he was the weakest link on that line the last 3 years, and he was alternating the final 7 weeks of the season and in the playoffs with his now replacement. And the speculation is at a Runyon, don't pull your guard, because he will trip over his own feet. And while he can pass protect, he is not a run blocker. He's not going to give you much in reference to run blocking. So that's perfect for this team. You had a plan. You had a thought process. And your thought process was you're not trying to win now. And then you think, okay, he's smarted. Joe Schoen smarted up this year a little bit. He's not trying to win now because of the fact that he can see that his roster is depleted of talent. But what does he do? He goes out and trades for Brian Burns. Brian Burns, 26 years old. He's going to make $15 million. You got a dead cap number of 76. Base salary of 8. Signing bonus of 7. He's a carbon copy of the guy you got wearing number 5 on the other side of the line. Does Brian Burns move the win total on the defense? No. He's not a Lawrence Taylor. He's not going to come in here and singularly win games for you by this defensive pressure. He has a propensity, and you can watch the film. I love how people tell me, well, I watched the film on him. No, you didn't watch the film on him. You watched the highlights on him. There is a difference. There's a difference between watching the film on a player and watching his highlights, because highlights 5 minutes long are his highlights. They don't show the other plays. They don't show the times that he went, I think it was 7 or 8 games last year where he had either 0 or 1 solo tackle. How he's had tendencies to disappear for games and plays and series at a time, kind of like Kayvon does. You needed a defensive end, yes, but you needed a true defensive end who understand the nuances of not only rushing the passer, but playing the run. Understanding the fact the strength of your defense should be in the middle with Dexter Lawrence, and your defensive end should understand how to maintain containment and push the play back into the middle of the field to your strength, which is going to be Bobby Okereke and Dexter Lawrence. So you take that salary cap money, you took those assets you could have used in the draft, and then you turned around and said, okay, we're not gonna do this. We're not doing this. We're gonna get a guy that's gonna be a pass rusher. Like I said, compensation wise, it's a good deal for the Giants. Talent wise, it's gonna be a lot to be desired and it's a lot to be seen. Then you talk about we talk about we're not gonna overpay for our own players. They're not going to be like our predecessor. So if you knew that, why didn't you trade Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you get rid of them? Why didn't you get the assets? If you knew you weren't going to bring that back because of salary ramifications and the fact that you basically could have had both players back at the salary of Brian Burns, why wouldn't you trade them then? Because you were thinking, again, I'm in a win now mode. Okay, well, the win now mode didn't work. Now, did it? You went out and got Waller because you were in a win now mode. You pulled a Gettleman by not getting rid of Landon Collins because you thought you were going to win some games. You can't do it both ways, Joe. You have to pick a direction. You got to pick a lane, Joe. Are you rebuilding or are you retooling to try to win now? Because I look at this roster and I just don't see the talent. I see the fact that you have almost 45% of your cap space right now tied up into Waller, Lawrence, Burns, Thomas, and Jones. That's an issue. Back in the day with the Knicks, and this one I was getting to the Knicks, James Dolan got smart at one point in time. He turned to Phil Jackson and said, now it didn't work out. He turned, and this is what I think, I kind of think Joe Schoen's pulling a Phil Jackson. Because Phil Jackson was given the keys to the franchise. He was given the keys to New York and said, okay, here you go. Do what you do. Make this team a winner. So what does Phil do? Immediately Phil goes out and he starts drafting guys and bringing guys in. They're going to run his triangle offense. Hell or high water, we're running the triangle. And it was hell. Because of the fact you got the likes of Frank Ntilikina. You brought in players, you brought in coaches that were supposed to be able to run your system, and it just turned out to be a bloody mess. And he was so rigidly inflexible about what he was doing, he just kept crashing through. He never changed directions. He never changed his plan. He never changed his philosophy. Now, unlike Joe Schoen changes his plans and his philosophy with the rising sun. Phil Jackson didn't do that, and it pushed the Knicks deep into despair. And it wasn't until back in 2020 when Dolan announced that Leon Rose had been named the president of New York Knicks basketball operations that did the Knicks finally have a direction. So many, and one of the things I liked about Rose is he came in here with a plan. His plan initially was we're going to build a young nucleus. We are going to build through draft capital, and we are going to wait to make the right trades and the right signings before we go out there and so we can compete. Now, there was a lot of people out there that thought there were certain moves that they should have made that the Knicks shied away from. There were moves that the Knicks looked at and they were like, okay, the Knicks are going to make this big trade. The Knicks are getting Donovan Mitchell. The Knicks are getting this. And they held fast. Leon Rose and his team held fast. They sat there and they said, you know what we're going to do? No. We are going to move these pieces the right way, and we're going to move the needle in our direction. And it all started with Jalen Brunson. Everyone kind of knew Brunson was coming to the Knicks, or allegedly was coming to the Knicks. But the problem was this. I personally did not think that he was going to come in at Brunson and do what he did. I didn't think that. I really didn't think that, because you want to know why? Because I thought to myself, well, you know what? He had that series, and maybe I was jaded with the Jerome James signing after his big playoff series. But the Knicks understood something. Leon Rose and his team saw something. And he moved the players the right way. He moved them in the direction they needed to move. Then what did they do? They turned around and got Josh Hart. They went out and got the Villanova connection. And it turned out to be special. Yeah, they had to give up a first rounder. Yeah, they did 100%. But he has played effectively and efficiently, Hart, and has made an impact in this city. Got his got his contract, and moved forward the right way. Now listen, signing Evan, that was a bad move. 4 years, $73 million. And I understood it, but you know what? That was a bad directional move for them. But then you have the likes of them drafting something, getting someone like Grimes with the 25th overall pick. And again, building the right way, building through the draft. They made a mistake drafting Obi Toppin because of the fact that he can't play defense, but then they got rid of that mistake. And then you bring in the likes of OG Anunoby. Another brilliant move. Knicks at one point were 13-1. What are they, like something crazy, like 23-3 with an OG? Because they used their assets. They used Barrett They used quickly. Not only did we get on an OG, we got also my precious, who I think should be used more in this system. You know, we were able to use the Quentin Grimes, the quickly, whose contract's expiring, the RJ Barrett, who we gave that deal for, gave that big deal to, but now we're getting out from underneath that deal. And at the end of the day, like I said, they built the roster their way. And they still have a large number of draft assets. The Knicks, that is. So not only are they building the roster around DiVincenzo, Hart, Brunson, Randall, they're building it the right way because they still have the assets they can use to acquire more talent because they had a direction, they had a philosophy. Can the Giants find that direction? Can the Giants find that philosophy? You take a look at this, and it's crazy. Now, some of these picks we're not going to get, but we have our own in 2024 first round. We have Dallas's, we have Detroit's, but I think that's 1 through 18 protected. And then we also have Washington's, which is 1 through 12 protected. And we have Miami's second round pick, and we have the second round pick from the Utah. It's either going to be Utah or Cleveland. And then next year we have 2 more first rounders. And then people say, then we get, I mean, but like I said, now some of these first rounders, if we don't start having, collect them, they're going to turn into second round picks. But like I said, the Knicks potentially have 4 first round picks. Now, it's probably going to be 2 or 3, but they have the assets to then move these picks for more talent. Leon Rose built a philosophy. He built a direction. He stuck to it. He didn't move with the prevailing winds because ownership, which is shocking with James Dolan, came in and said, we need to win now. You need to sign my quarterback. You need to do this. Pick a lane, Joe. Pick a lane. You're either in a rebuild or you're trying to win now. You're in year 3. That's all I'm asking. We got a big live stream today at noon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to ring that bell because you want to know why. That'd be awesome.